Poštovani gledaoci, dobar dan. Vi gledate i slušate još jedno izdanje emisije Pola sata Demostata. Danas imamo gosta iz Atlantskog saveta Amerike, gospodina Metjua Kroniga, sa kojim ćemo pokriti čitav niz tema od kineskog uticaja i kineske propagande pa do gorućih geopolitičkih pitanja. Mr. Kronig, hello and welcome to Serbia.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here with us and for taking your time to come to Demostat's podcast and videocast, half an hour of Demostat. You're an expert on China, so shall we start with that question? Some say we're facing a new global polarization with the United States on one side and China on the other side. You have written a lot of articles, a lot of studies on the topics of China and relations between USA and China. So what can you tell us? From the Serbian perspective, we are on the edge between European countries, Russian influence, Chinese influence, the United States on the other side. How do you comment on all of this?
Yes, well, I do think we're entering a new period of great power competition in international politics. Some have called it a new Cold War between the United States and China. So I think it is a dangerous moment. I would just say I don't think it's accurate to say it's with the U.S. and China only because the United States does have a lot of allies and partners on its side, with the European Union calling China a systemic rival, with countries in Asia, including Japan, Australia, Philippines, becoming more concerned about China's aggressive behavior. So I think it's kind of the entire free world on one side and China and a couple of its friends on the other side.
You come from the Atlantic Council of America. This week, aside from Serbia, you traveled around Europe as well. You traveled to meet with NATO Secretary General, Mr. Mark Rutte, and other European officials on possible 5% defense spending target in the upcoming days.
Yes, that's right. And as you probably know, the NATO countries agreed in 2014 to spend at least 2% of their GDP on defense. Recently, President Trump has called for NATO allies to spend 5% of GDP on their defense. And it seems like at the NATO summit in The Hague in a few weeks that they will come to that agreement. It'll be 3.5% spending on hard defense and 1.5% on other security-related spending, such as cybersecurity. And this is related to China, to bring it back to the first question, because I think really the challenge facing the United States and its allies is how can we deter and, if necessary, defeat China, Russia, Iran, North Korea at the same time. And if the United States is going to need to prioritize China and the Indo-Pacific more, then we do need our NATO European allies to step up and do more to help us defend against Russia in Europe.
When you say NATO European allies, there we have Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. They are on the very eastern flank of NATO. You also hosted the United States-Latvia Resilience Conference. How was the conference and how important it was exactly in the light of what you have just said?
Yes, well, I think it was a good conference, and we're doing more work at the Atlantic Council on national security resilience in Latvia, but also Taiwan and elsewhere, because I think what we're seeing in Ukraine is it's not just armies and navies that go to war, but entire societies. And so if there were a Russian attack into the Baltic states, if there is a Chinese attack into Taiwan, how can we make sure those societies are resilient, to make sure that they have energy supplies, to make sure that they have access to the internet, to make sure that they have stockpiles of food, water, energy, other things that they would need to sustain themselves in the event of a war. And so some of the countries on the front lines of Russia, like Finland, Estonia, Latvia, have more experience with this than others. So I think learning from them and sharing those lessons with others is going to be an important part of security in the 21st century.
With the war still for the third year going on in Ukraine, the eastern NATO flank is definitely under a lot of pressure. Implementing NATO's China policy, is it going to be difficult? How is it going to go? How do you see that from your own perspective?
Yes, well, I think NATO and European allies have an important stake in the China challenge. China's systematically stealing intellectual property from European countries. China is engaging in gross human rights abuses, including genocide of the Uyghur population. Europeans have traditionally been champions of values and human rights. And if there's a major conflict between the United States and China and Taiwan, that would obviously have global implications, including probably a worldwide economic depression that would obviously affect Europe. So I think because of this, European allies have come on board with America's China strategy in recent years. The past several NATO communiques have mentioned China as a threat. And so I think they're playing an important role when it comes to economic de-risking, when it comes to the technology competition. And we've even had some NATO allies have a military presence in the Indo-Pacific, sending naval ships for freedom of navigation operations or sending staff officers to big military exercises. And I think that's important to send the message to China that if you invade Taiwan, that's not just an issue between you and Taiwan, but an issue between you and the entire free world.
We're also talking about critical minerals in the sense of security. It's lithium, it's borax, it's so many minerals. How do you see the role of critical minerals, such as lithium, in today's very complex world's environment? In what way does access to critical raw materials affect a country's geopolitical position, but also what's the most important, national security?
Yes, and I understand that there may be lithium deposits in Serbia, so it's an important question for your audience. And these critical minerals are critical for advanced technology, and they're in our cell phones and critical for chips, for artificial intelligence. And over the past several years, China has come to dominate the market, both for mining but also for reprocessing. And I think there's been a recognition in the West that we cannot be dependent on a hostile dictatorship for access to these important minerals. And so there's an effort to secure supply chains and critical minerals, also in other critical areas, to make sure that we have secure supply chains with trusted friends. So there is a movement to mine critical minerals in other areas, reprocess them in other areas. That's part of Trump's interest in the critical minerals deal in Ukraine, for example. And there's also discussions underway about creating critical mineral stockpiles, just like the United States has a strategic petroleum reserve to be able to tap into oil in the event of some kind of global disruption, to have stockpiles of critical minerals so that if China were to cut them off, there would still be stockpiles upon which we could draw.
Are we getting closer to some world disruption of the system?
I do worry about that, and I probably worry most about a Chinese invasion of Taiwan, because Xi has been very clear that he wants to take Taiwan, and he said that he'd prefer to do it peacefully, but he will do it militarily if necessary. And he's asked his military to give him the ability to invade Taiwan by 2027. So that's not to say he will invade in 2027, but he does want the option. So we're only 2 years or so away from that. We have the ongoing war in Ukraine, of course, that could spill over into international borders. And so I do think that there is a real risk of a major war, maybe in Europe and Asia at the same time. And so I think the challenge for the United States and its allies is to build the capabilities so that we can deter that conflict, because a war like that, of course, would be catastrophic for everyone.
Definitely. As you said, Serbia really has one of the biggest and highest grade lithium deposits in Europe. We are facing a lot of disinformation, a lot of stigma, but also a lot of fear when it comes to lithium. So it's a very polarized society when it comes to these strategic and from security perspective, very important critical materials. So from the side of your expertise, what this could mean for our country, economically, geopolitically, and in terms of national security, that Serbia is lucky or unlucky to have these deposits?
Well, I think that you're fortunate overall to have them, that they are critical and can be a source of revenue and jobs in mining, maybe reprocessing if that's of interest. I guess my warning would be, though, is I know that Serbia already has some investments from China. And what we've seen with Chinese investments around the world is that often these don't pay off, that the infrastructure that China builds is often not very good. And I understand that there was a tragedy here with a Chinese-built train station that collapsed. And so my condolences.
Yes, it happened. Thank you.
To those who lost their lives. Also, China doesn't have the same kind of environmental practices that we have in the West, and so often their investments lead to environmental damage. And then different labor standards as well, poor treatment of workers. Oftentimes they'll bring in Chinese workers to do the job. And so I think often these Chinese investments don't pay off, and the host nations don't get the benefits they'd hoped for. So I think as you think about this lithium mine, maybe think twice before giving it access to a Chinese company.
Exactly. And which brings me to a very interesting situation. It looks like in Serbia we have a conflict of information. While we don't hear so many negative narratives when it comes to Chinese investments and Chinese companies, on the other side we hear a lot of negative narratives in the media space about Western companies, also about Western mining or other companies that definitely come from the Western countries. So is this a kind of war when it comes to conflict of information? Is this propaganda? Who is involved? Why is involved? Is this between China and the opponents?
Yeah, it sounds like it's propaganda because, as I said, there are a lot of problems associated with Chinese investments, and many countries around the world have woken up to that. So we do see countries like Italy and Lithuania that signed up for the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative to get Chinese investments who've decided that they no longer want to be a part of that, and they're pulling out. And in terms of the messaging, China is very sophisticated with its disinformation. I just got back from Taiwan, and there the Chinese do a lot of really sophisticated things, paying off local social media influencers to advance pro-Chinese narratives, anti-Western narratives, using AI algorithms and bots, fake social media accounts to make sure that the false pro-Chinese narratives get a lot of attention. So I'm not an expert on Serbia. It's my first time here. But I wouldn't be surprised if China is also actively spreading disinformation in Serbia that are artificially kind of inflating pro-China narratives and artificially spreading false anti-Western narratives.
On the other side, we have Chinese subtle propaganda in many areas. For example, within 15 years, approximately, 5G is likely to be replaced by dual-use 6G technologies with AI-enabled capacities and of military significance. China is also likely to incorporate more of its civil military fusion strategy. They have 5G now. They're going to have 6G. So could you explain to us what is this civil military fusion strategy and how is that going to be affected also and seen here in Europe?
The civil military fusion policy essentially means that there's no such thing as a private company in China. All companies in China are required to share any information that they get with the Chinese Communist Party. Private companies have minders from the party overseeing their business. And as it relates to 6G and Serbia, again, I would strongly recommend that you not allow Chinese companies like Huawei to install 6G And there are a number of risks. One is espionage, and we know that Huawei, all the information that it sucks up is going back to the Chinese Communist Party in Beijing. Second, we know that China uses its economic influence for leverage, and it's coerced South Korea and Australia with economic means when they've adopted policies that China didn't like. So in the future, China could threaten to shut off the 6G technology if Serbia took some kind of position it didn't like, or use that threat to force the Serbian government to adopt a pro-Chinese line, even if it's not in the interest of the Serbian people. And then, God forbid, they could choose to shut down the 6G network, which could be devastating for Serbia. So I would strongly recommend going with a more trusted Western company and not Huawei.
Definitely. And when we talk about Huawei, there is something called Splinternet. It sounds like a splinter from Turtles.
Yes.
Yeah, for Ninja Turtles.
I used to love that show when I was a kid.
Yeah. But it's called Splinternet. Actually, China, through Huawei, is proposing a new internet protocol that is nothing less than an attempt to set the rules and design the architecture of a new internet. How dangerous, actually, this new internet protocol by China is going to be.
Yes, well, and I think it's one of the dangers of the U.S.-China technology competition in general, because I think we take it for granted because we've had it so long, but essentially the West has had a technology advantage going back to the first industrial revolution, and that's allowed us to embed our values of openness and transparency into the technology. And that's one of the benefits of the internet. It's open and free for everyone to use. But China doesn't like that model. It's an authoritarian system. It likes control. And it's already embedding its authoritarian values into technology using artificial intelligence, for example, for facial recognition technology and spying on its citizens. And so I think this Splinternet, this new Chinese internet protocol, would be a separate internet, separate from the World Wide Web. They're already testing it in China and in some African countries. And the idea is it would be a separate internet that they could use within their country where they could have more top-down control. And so I think it is a threat to this kind of open model of technology development that we've enjoyed for many years. And I hope that this Chinese effort fails.
TikTok. Highly controversial topic. Teenagers, kids saying, do not take it away from us. We, older generations, we see how dangerous it is.
Yeah, yes, that's right. And dangerous for a couple of reasons. One is the espionage reason. We know that China is sucking up all that data, not just from the TikTok platform, but other data from other apps on people's phones. So, I mean, imagine during the Cold War if the United States allowed the Soviet Union to place listening devices on millions of Americans that they carried around with them every day. Obviously, we would have never let that happen, but essentially that's what we're allowing now by allowing Americans to download TikTok. Second, researchers have shown how China is also using TikTok to spread disinformation, making sure that videos that are more anti-American or anti-Western get a lot of views, pro-Chinese narratives get a lot of views. And so national security experts in Washington, including me, think that we should ban TikTok. But as you point out, it's difficult politically. Many teenagers and influencers enjoy using it. And so we're trying to find the solution in Washington. And the solution may be as simple as having the Chinese company sell TikTok to a Western company. And so you could still have the features that people enjoy, making the silly dance videos without the national security risks. So I hope it's resolved in that way soon.
We're talking about security, where there is security, there is cybersecurity and cyber attacks. Beijing has the ability to tap into data flows via international and interregional cables. It has used China telecoms present, for example, in North America, so near continent, but also in Europe, to hijack data traffic through Chinese servers. This challenge looks like it's likely to grow. So use of AI in cyber attacks is likely to enable malware to adapt to countermeasures and security controls more rapidly than human-centered systems. So how dangerous is all this?
Yeah, China is one of the most sophisticated cyber actors in the world, and there are a number of threats. One, as you point out, is the espionage element, getting into networks and sucking up data. And it's been reported in the United States, this Salt Typhoon attack, where essentially China's penetrated all American telecommunications companies, AT&T, et cetera. And so it was probably reported in Serbia, this Signal-gate scandal with Mike Waltz. But part of the reason they were using Signal is because it's an encrypted app that the Chinese cannot tap into. But then the second danger is we know that China is mapping these networks to plan for future attacks. So critical infrastructure in both the United States and in Europe, water supplies, energy supplies, because in the event of a conflict with the United States, then they could conduct cyber attacks to turn off water, turn off power, in part to make it more difficult for the United States to flow military forces from the United States or Europe into Asia. So I think for all of those reasons, we should be concerned about China's cyber activities.
Very difficult, but we should defend ourselves against that in the future. When we get back to the Serbian terrain here, the Chinese propaganda has a real impact in Serbian news media outlets, on the radio television of Serbia, but also on the TV stations with national frequency. It's very broad public opinion influence. But here we also have a particularly paradox case. It is striking that there is virtually no resistance to Chinese malign campaigns. We have the promotion of Chinese investments. We have the promotion of Chinese companies, Russian companies as well. On the other side, really, really rare, we could see the promotion of the investments coming from the European Union or from the Western countries. So it's a very subjective coverage in the pro-governmental media outlets. It's one of the most pressing problems our society is facing with.
Yes, well, I just arrived in Serbia yesterday, but I was very surprised to learn that opinions of the United States and Europe and the West are so low, and opinions of China are so high. It's almost a bizarro world. It turned upside down because the Western world created after World War II hasn't been perfect, but I think it's overall been successful. 0 major power wars in 80 years. Standards of living around the world are 5 times higher than they used to be. In 1945, there were 12 democracies on Earth. Today, there are 100. So the world is safer, richer, and freer because of the world order that the United States and Europe built together. And China's trying to tear that all down. A very different set of values. It's engaging in a genocide at home with 1 million Uyghurs locked up. Engages in really unfair trade practices, stealing intellectual property from other countries contrary to international rules, and is building a military to attack its neighbors that could lead to World War III. So I do think China is a malign actor in world affairs and probably the greatest threat that the free world has faced, maybe in history, because it's much more capable than Nazi Germany or the Soviet Union ever was. So in U.S. public opinion polls, China is far and away the number one threat that the American people see. And so part of the reason I'm here is to try to get the message out and help Serbians understand the real threat that China poses.
And we thank you for that because the ruling party here in Serbia constantly promotes Chinese-Serbian and Serbian-Russian relations and cooperation. And the Demostat research findings clearly showed that pro-Chinese and pro-Russian sentiments are completely hand in hand with the anti-Western sentiments, which is another problem that we are facing with.
Yes, and to be clear, the United States has formal diplomatic relations with China. The United States trades with China. So I wouldn't say that there should be zero relations with China, but I think we should be aware of the risks and the kind of country that we're dealing with, and getting too dependent on China. Again, a dictatorship that really wants to overturn world order and is willing to use force to do that, that treats its own people terribly, is not the kind of country you want to get too close to.
However, they continue their influence here in the sphere of culture, in the sphere of politics, in the sphere of economy as well. But is there a possibility that diplomatic efforts can actually help in this defense against these issues?
Well, I think so. And I think it has to be diplomatic, but I think it has to be broader than that, because the China threat is comprehensive. There's an economic component, there's a technology component, there's a values component, and a military component. And so I think the U.S. and the free world strategy has to address all of those. And I think Serbia can be a critical part of that as well. If we think about the economic and technology aspects, one of the terms that's being used now is de-risking. So that's, again, exactly this point that if you want to sell China agriculture, or if you want to buy Chinese T-shirts, that's okay. But when it comes to more sensitive areas, military cooperation, high technology cooperation, there you want to be cautious, because, again, creates vulnerabilities. And so I think if the United States approaches this kind of de-risking strategy on its own, it doesn't really work much better if Europe and Asian allies are right there beside us.
And there is no wonder why they want to increase their defense budget, because of all these threats posed by China and Russia. However, we know that funding problems are also there, existing for the allies and for the Western countries as well. Is this new global defense bank, the so-called Defense Security and Resilience Bank, actually going to help us solve U.S. and allied funding problems?
Yes, well, there are a number of new efforts out there for helping countries to fund defense, including ideas for a global defense bank, kind of like a World Bank that would allow countries to borrow money for military investments. The European Union has also announced some new packages. And so I think this is a promising model, because NATO has set the clear capability requirements and targets that allies need to reach. And then these other fund organizations like the bank and the European Union can provide the financing to help them do that.
And to conclude this conversation, I know it's the most difficult question, but from your perspective as an expert for Chinese influence, what are the possible models of resistance to Chinese influence here in Serbia?
Well, I think part of it is just countering the narrative, and that's part of the reason I'm here to show the other part. And I think the work that Demostat and you are doing is also part of that. So thank you. And cyber security is one area, making investments. And then we do have organizations in the United States, too, that like a digital forensics research lab at the Atlantic Council that just points out disinformation. And so I think the first step is understanding. And so if, Demostat or other organizations, maybe even Serbian government organizations, would point out disinformation from Russia and China, I think that would be doing a real service. And then certainly not making it any easier for the Chinese to spread false narratives through official channels, like through public television stations. I think that's problematic. That's something we'd want to look into. And ultimately, I think the benefit we have is that China has to spread disinformation. We just need to tell the truth. And I think in the end, the truth often wins out.
Thank you for this fantastic message for the end and for insightful conversation.
Thanks for the interview. It was great to be here.
Poštovani gledaoci i slušaoci Demostata, naš današnji gost bio je Metju Kronig iz Atlantskog saveta Amerike. Moje ime je Tamara Bajčić. Do sledećeg gledanja i slušanja ne zaboravite da nas zapratite na YouTube-u, ali i da pratite naš sadržaj na društvenim mrežama. Do nekog sledećeg viđenja i slušanja. Prijetno!